ועכשיו באמת תרשו לי להזמין לבמה, I would like to ask you to join us, Mr. לארי לנדרי. Larry Landry is a global chairman of investment banking in JP Morgan. He has 40 years of experience, but more than anything else, Larry is a great friend of our industry and our country. Larry personally led the project financing of Tamar, then the Tamar bond activity, then the project financing of Leviathan, and then the Leviathan bond activity. If we have gas in Israel that basically provide to Israel security of supply for many, many years, certainty for our energy sector, there's a lot because of Larry Landry. So thank you, Larry, that you are with us today.
Thank you, Yossi. It's great to be here with you. And I can tell you as an American, it's great to be here to support our friends in Israel in this difficult time. And as a representative of JP Morgan, we really believe in giving back to our communities, and JP Morgan stands with you as well.
Thank you, Larry. I will say that when Yossi Rosen and Yossi Arye were calling me and say, let's think globally, like who can add value to the conference and give us a little bit of what's going on globally, I was basically say immediately Larry Landry. And then when I called you, you were in 2 seconds say, I'm coming. And that was very unique, taking into consideration what's going on in our country. But I would say that since he said, I'm coming, 6 flights have been canceled. And Larry had all the reason to say, Yossi, I was there, I tried, but I couldn't. And he did it, although 6 flights have been canceled. So thank you, Larry. Let's move a little bit. Larry, we are here. We were very focused on what's going on in our country in the last few months. And maybe we will use you are with us. Share with us a little bit of what's going on in the oil and gas market, upstream globally. We see a lot of deals recently in the market, mega deals. What's going on?
So upstream globally, you're in a period of consolidation. And what you're seeing, the US has had a remarkable transition to become energy self-sufficient, but we've got a lot of different oil companies. They trade at very low multiples, relative to the broader market. And what you're seeing is that investors are reluctant to support all of these companies. And you've got Exxon buying Pioneer, you have Chevron buying Hess, all aimed at, consolidating, particularly in Southwest and Chesapeake merging on the natural gas side. And you've seen it here with, BP and ADNOC offering to buy 50% of NewMed. So what's happening is people are consolidating to drive costs down, to try to improve returns, to generate more capital to invest themselves, as opposed to having to rely on outside investors, and to find growth.
Thank you. No, certainly. We see as well in our region, we saw the BP deal basically with ADNOC. ADNOC came 50% into BP Egypt, and I think part of their global or at least the regional view, they were offering what they offer on NewMed. And I hope that it will come back. But now we'll move a little bit to the region. One of the things that I think all of us here in the market will share with you is that we are in a period of much more uncertainty than usual. And some of our infrastructure project, energy project have challenges to go on. Certainly because of the geopolitical situation. And I would like to ask you, you have vast experience of financing, projects globally and in the area. What can be done? Whether it's we, the investor, the government, what can be done?
You know, right now would obviously be a bit of a challenging time to try to finance anything within the region because people are going to want to see things settle down a little bit. But away from that, it's about developing and promoting good projects. Tamar, Leviathan, those are amazing projects, right? Tamar's been producing since 2013, and it's got, when we did it, there's a saying around oil fields that good oil fields get better and bad oil fields get worse. And I said this to Yossi many times, and my colleague Yoni Hornick. Tamar has as many reserves in 2024 as it has in 2013. Leviathan's been producing for 5 years, and it's got more reserves than it had 5 years ago. So these are unbelievable reservoirs and strong offtake markets. Those characteristics will generate very strong returns, which will attract investors. It's kind of just that simple, really. But government plays a very important role, right? People need stability, and we've gone through changes in gas policy, Shishensky, you had to divest of Tamar. All those things create uncertainty. Investors like stable, predictable stuff, particularly in and around the natural resources space, right? They're not trying to buy, the next NVIDIA here. That's a completely different investor base with a completely different outlook. Here, people are looking for good, safe returns, stability, repeatability. So now governments have an important role to play in that in terms of not changing the rules on the fly, making things predictable, making people feel comfortable about committing capital.
Well, I agree. You say some names that I'm trying to forget, but no.
I had to learn how to remember.
Yes, I think certainty is whenever you have more uncertainty, anything that you can, provide their certainty, and especially whether it's with government, etc. I totally agree with you. This is something that can help us to take forward here, me and my friends, to take forward investment in the country. And let me tell you something, we are here to invest and to continue develop and invest our country, and this is our focus, and this is why we will work hard and achieve it. Now, one more question, and I think you have a unique perspective. We managed to provide and to build a very unique relationship in the region around the natural gas business. As you know, as you financed, Leviathan is flowing gas to Jordan, flowing gas to Egypt. We are working to see wherever, in the region, additional countries we can introduce gas. And it's very interesting if you can share your perspective on this partnership. How you see that, how you view those partnerships from abroad. So
at JP Morgan, we like to give back to the communities we operate in, the communities, the countries. We try to be a good neighbor. If you look, we've done a lot in terms of rebuilding Detroit, which everybody thought was a complete train wreck and was a bankrupt U.S. city not too long ago, and just got investment grade credit ratings again. Here, for us, it was apparent what a catalyst, the selling gas from Israel into Jordan and Egypt could be for overall regional stability. And, relationships begin with small steps, and they build from that. And we thought this was an important first step, and it was, critically important to us as we looked at trying to help arrange financing for the projects. Investors cared less about that, right? In fact, in many cases, they were more concerned because particularly Egypt didn't have a very good commercial track record in terms of paying for things that they bought. And, they relied on us at JP Morgan to diligence the contracts, to diligence the arrangements. Yossi, you negotiated a very favorable protections for yourself in terms of how you were going to get paid. And, that enabled us to go out, to raise the money on incredibly attractive terms for you.
Thank you. But it's very interesting, the view, and I'm familiar with that. Once, we are sitting here and we are seeing a bit more geopolitical risk around, call it Egypt, right? So globally, people look on those and say, this bring more certainty and stability. And I think this is something which is, I experienced, I visit Egypt many times, it's the same. When I'm sitting here, people say, yeah, one time Egypt will not want the gas. When I'm sitting in Egypt, they are afraid that in one day somebody here will close the valve. So same story from their side. And globally, people look on that and say, okay, it just brings more stability. And that's unique opportunity for us.
So I had dinner recently with the lawyer we used to do the original financings. And he's retired now, and he considers, he's Jewish, he considers the financings we did for Tamar and Leviathan among the highlights of his career in terms of what they meant in terms of broader stability for people. And it's really quite interesting when you sit down. This is a guy who's, very senior lawyer, has done lots of transactions all over the world. He rates these as among the favorite things he's ever done for those reasons.
I can understand.
And by the way, it wasn't lost on, at least on me. Jordan helped shoot down, some of the missiles and drones coming from Iran a couple weeks back. And these are significant steps in what's going to be a very long and very difficult process, but they're at least steps along the way.
I agree. I see, when we see Jordan and Egypt contributing in what we call the Iranian night, like a lot of partners in the region, it was very clear to us who is a friend and who is not. And I think that we are familiar with other friends in the region, other countries, that I hope that soon we'll see normalization and formal relationship with them, because the opportunity is certainly around the infrastructure and energy market, and if I point directly to Saudi, is enormous. And once you review those potential relationships, it can bring win-win to citizens all over the region. So maybe we'll talk a little bit go back a little bit to the global scene. And one of the things that we are seeing and experiencing, by the way, here in Israel, the same, but maybe, and in the region, but globally, I think it's very clear that a lot of people talking about energy transition, about net zero targets, about low carbon energy, but yet we are not seeing the rates moving that direction. So what is your view?
Well, I think the year of magical thinking might be over. We just had a 48-hour sustainability summit in Phoenix within the US. It's a pet project of our chairman and CEO, Jamie Dimon. He started the first one, I guess 2 years ago. This was the third. And we had government officials there. We had IPP players there. We had large-scale utilities there. We had investors of various stripes there. And basically the aim was to sit in a room and talk about how you facilitate this transition in an orderly way. I mean, it's clear that the future is less carbon and more renewables. But the process, no process is ever linear, right? And it was completely unsustainable for people to say, okay, we're going to be carbon zero, net carbon zero by 2035 or 2050, and you're starting to see people back away from that. So if you look at what's happened, the pace of renewable adoption has been very high, right? 10, 20% compound growth in deployment of renewables globally. The share of renewables as a percentage of total power consumed in the US is about 20%, in Europe it's about 25%, and it is barely moving, right? So the world is using as much fossil fuels today more fossil fuels today than they were using 10 years ago, and they're going to use more again tomorrow. So this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. After the Russians turned off LNG, or gas sales into Europe, you've never seen more barges full of coal on the Mississippi River, right? I was down recently looking, we financed an LNG facility down there, export facility down there, and standing right along, as we flew in a helicopter down the river, record numbers of barges full of coal, all destined for Europe, right? Germany has had to, they've turned off nukes, turned on coal. In the US, in the largest energy transmission distribution region, which is PJM, it stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. It's the largest grid system operator in the US and maybe one of the largest in the world. Their production, their demand forecast for electricity used to look like this, and now looks like that, right? Driven by the electrification of things. I just was listening to the previous speaker talk about how that's happening here, and by insatiable AI demand, right? You've got Microsoft looking at backward integrating into power generation, Amazon looking at backward integrating into power integration, because their demand for electricity is huge. So clearly, and I think this is a very important thing for NewMed, the transition fuel is going to be natural gas, right? Clearly, we've got to displace coal. We no longer at JP Morgan will finance coal companies or coal projects, right? We've got a large center for carbon transition where we try to advise people and help them on the path to getting green. But remember, it was always net zero. It wasn't zero fossil fuels. And people get confused about that.
Yeah, and I think this is what we are experiencing as well here. So what we are seeing is that in the region, certainly, that the growth in electric consumption is higher than people expected. And basically the penetration of renewable, even if it's meet the targets, and usually it's not meet the targets, is not picking enough to basically replace the growth, but as well the core. And this is the experience. One of the, I would say, and maybe finance, and with your view on that, I think Israel have great potential to take leadership on the AI world. Once, obviously, because of the high-tech community that we have here, but I would say that the ability to secure certainty around energy and certainty around prices of energy for many, many years to come, right, is something which can bring Israel to this position. And obviously, this is for government to take the leadership and to try to create I would say, the environment and the umbrella for that to grow.
Energy security is, I come from a country that's truly blessed, right? We've got oceans on either side. We've got friendly neighbors to the north and to the south. We are energy self-sufficient. We can feed ourselves. We've got the world's largest economy. Our politics are a bit of a mess at the moment, but we'll get through that too. So it's a unique position to be in, but energy security is going to become critically important. The other thing that's going to become important is the cost of energy, because it's incredibly regressive for the less fortunate people in society when power prices rise 30% over 4 years, which is what they've just done in the United States. I was in Phoenix, the mayor of Phoenix spoke at our conference. 645 people died in Phoenix last year because the temperature in July averaged 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what, 45, give or take, centigrade?
Yeah.
And they could no longer afford to pay their power bills, right? That's a big deal. So finding ways, one of my clients likes to tell people we're going to have cheap, clean, renewable power. I tell them you can do two of those things. The cheap part's going to be very hard to achieve. Security is going to be very hard to achieve. It's going to become paramount.
Larry, thank you again for coming. Thank you for supporting us through this last decade and more. And we're looking forward to the next project together. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Yossi. Thank you, everyone.